You both run elite programs, but in different environments. We wanted to bring you two together to find common ground between the secular and Jewish basketball worlds. Let's see how we can learn from each other's playbook and level up. I have Coach Carpenter here and Coach Rosow. Can we call you Abie and Kevin here?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you for
That's
having
fine. Okay. You both play, did you both play basketball as kids?
Yeah.
Okay. So I also played basketball. It was really my passion. School was not really my thing necessarily, but they always felt, to me, my school really appreciated sports. And I find that in a lot of places, that is not necessarily the case within our Jewish world, because we sort of have like a cap on what we're capable of doing. Do you guys feel like that's real in our world? Or I know you played college ball.
Mm-hmm.
Was that hard considering the restrictions?
I think it was harder then than it is now, because I think now with Yeshiva University being what it is, and there's so much more talent in the Jewish community that I think you see other players that have done it and played at that level that you think you could play at that level too. I think that, playing for an all-Jewish school maybe didn't seem like a cool thing to do before, but now that Yeshiva University wins conference championships and is in the tournament just like anybody else, that if you're good enough to play college basketball, why wouldn't you go there? So I think that now it's a lot. I don't think people see it as a cap as much as they used to.
Do you feel like it's a challenge to coach people who have restrictions?
No, not at all. I think it all goes down to hoops is a great spot that breaks so many barriers, socioeconomic barriers, racial barriers, religious barriers. And it's a spot where, kids can come and get on the court and share a common goal and common interest for something that they love, for the game they love. And when you go back to the, start from the beginning in terms of why do we get into youth sports? And I think when you think about why you put your kid into youth sports, it's really not centered around getting to the end product of playing college or pro. It's for all the intangibles in between.
So what are some of the intangibles that you feel are most important?
Well, I think to start out, it's about building resistance within your child. It's about giving them the ability for goal setting, both short-term and long-term. I think when you think about the concept of team, right? You get outside the world of sports and you go into the business world. It's all about team building and relationships. And, basketball, we were talking about it prior to hopping on here, that basketball is a, very small world. And the relationships you build and the people that I've met along the game of basketball, are still lifelong friends of mine. And, we do business together or, just have really close relationships.
You have close relationships with the people that you've played basketball with over the years?
Yeah, for sure. I've had, players that have played with me that have coached under me in my program. Also, now all the AAU connections that I had when I was a player, they've helped me now with my all-Jewish teams to play in tournaments only on Sundays and things like that, where if I just called a random program, maybe they wouldn't be so quick to help me. So I remember going to these camps and going to these programs, and now they remember me coming back now as a coach. So all these relationships that I had as a player now help me now as a coach.
So you run an AAU program,
Yeah.
developmental program. My son happens to play in both of your programs. And while I love AAU basketball because I feel like it opens the door for a lot of our kids to experience real challenge, real competition, whereas, sometimes a rec center league might not be as tough, and we want to go to the next level. Do you think that AAU is what it used to be because you played as a kid and you run a program? Or do you think that now the focus is something completely different?
I think the AAU term is used very widely.
Yes.
And I think that when we were growing up, there were less options. And now today, the menu of options is much larger than ever before. More programs, more teams, different levels of play, ABC levels. I know personally, amongst many roundtable internal discussions with AAU, I know they're doing a lot to try to provide more options for people with religious restrictions on different events that are being run. That's actually something that's taking place, and it should be coming out relatively soon. With regards to, just overall though, thinking about AAU is a vehicle, and how different programs use that vehicle can vary, and they can either use it properly or abuse it, right? So when you're seeking programs for who you want your child to play for, you want to pick a program that's focusing on development of your child, especially depending upon the age. And then also it gives options for exposure, right, across the way. So those two things are great variables, but how you use the vehicle of AAU is important. And, you want to, start with great coaches and great programs.
You think that all coaches are created equal?
No, I don't think all programs are equal. And I think that it's parents need, do your due diligence with who you're putting your kid with, and in terms of what your values are and what your goals are for your son or daughter, and you want to put them with something that aligns with your vision.
What's the ideal vision? I mean, we teach about like mitos, which is like good qualities and being respectful and doing all of these things, but you see things on the court. Like you see kids, fighting with refs or figuring out how to deal with each other as like a team. How do you handle that when like there's this intense competition?
Well, hopefully it doesn't get to that point, because hopefully you deal with that in practice.
There we go. Important.
So, and look, obviously you can't control, and even you could be the best coach in the world and you could have the best kids in the world, but it's something could always happen. Like you try in practice to emulate what games are going to be like, or even make it even tougher, so that they don't come through a scenario that they haven't seen before. But it's not always possible. So sometimes stuff happens, and then you have to be able to deal with it. Every scenario is different, but every kid's different too. So you sometimes you want to talk to a kid out loud, but if you do that, you may embarrass him in front of everybody. Sometimes you want to call the kid over and you want to talk to him separately. Sometimes it depends on what he does. Sometimes immediately you got to take him out of the game, and it doesn't matter what point of the game it is, because it's bigger that if you teach the kid it's just about winning a 6th grade game, then like what are you actually teaching them? But if you teach them like I care about winning, but I care more about you doing the right thing and acting the right way, then you show them that like winning is not the most important thing. And if you want it to be the most important thing, then you have to do the right thing all the time, and then you can focus on winning.
Yeah, I agree with Coach 100%. I think it's about the standard that you set inside the culture of your program and your teams. And with that, you either coach it or you allow it, right? In terms of behavior. And I always talk to our players about being an energy giver or energy taker, right? And having kids that are on your team that are really rooting for others, and trying to help the overall, team morale is super important. And there's going to be situations that come up in terms of frustration and emotions. And I think that when you talk to your players, there's allowing that conversation to just evolve over time, especially depending if you have an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, or a 12-year-old. And it's different in terms of how you communicate to them. So if your standard is, hey, look, we're not going to tolerate you talking back to a coach, disrespecting a teammate, yelling at a referee, I think that's stuff that happens, inside the foxhole, inside practices, inside of timeouts. And then you got to hold the players accountable. And I think that's really important. And having that dialogue with parents and players is super valuable over the course of a season.
Do you find that your coaching sort of shifts for like different ages? Because obviously you're not going to talk to an 8-year-old the same way you're going to talk to a 16-year-old. Do you find that you need to adjust your coaching for them?
Sure. I think the message is the same, no matter what age. Even if you're an adult, nobody should be talking back to referee. Like, this is not the way to be. But yes, of course, the way you communicate with kids is going to change depending on the age. How many depends, like what type of mistakes they're making. It depends if they miss a layup, like the kid didn't try to miss a layup, but if he's not talking on defense, that's something that, intangibles or things that no matter how good you are, you should be doing, are a little bit different. But also the level of player, like a 16-year-old knows a lot more, so he's responsible for a lot more than an 8-year-old is, because you didn't teach them as much yet. So for sure it's different.
it also kind of goes to the idea where like we're navigating this whole concept of like a kid at 16 pretends they don't care, where as an 8-year-old they care so much. They're like in tears on the court when something happens. They can't regulate their emotions appropriately. How do you handle those moments where like a kid's like, I don't care if I win or lose, or they care too much and they're hysterical after a game when they lose?
I think an 8-year-old crying on the court often gets misinterpreted. And I think it's because they care. And then it's about having conversations with how to handle frustration. As coaches, we want to put our players in environments that are, tough and test the boundaries sometimes. And it's our job as coaches to also lead them and be leaders on and off the floor as role models in terms of, okay, something tough, something didn't go your way, how are you going to handle that? And creating environments in practice, having conversations with them, how to handle your emotions. You're going down the floor, you steal the ball, you go down, you go for a layup, you get knocked to the ground, you don't get the foul, player gets up and now has maybe a level of frustration. You want to teach them, hey, look, turn, run back, and make a play, right? And there's so many different things that go on. With the 16-year-old, it's also different because at that stage, you're talking about, how are you going to work inside a team, and are you going to pick the teammate up that's around you that's down? Sometimes as an 8-year-old, you're focused on the individual, but then as a 16-year-old, you're not only focused on the individual, you're talking about, hey, you see a teammate struggling. What are you going to do to impact that? Okay. Yeah. So when you're talking about an 8-year-old, you're really focused in on the individual in terms of how they're going to handle and adapt to things that are frustrating them. And then when you're 16, you're not only talking about it from that angle, you're also talking about how can they impact the teammate and pick a teammate up, and whether that's, motivating them in different ways, verbally and non-verbally.
I like that.
Just want to add something. I also think younger kids, like let's talk about 8 and 16, 8-year-olds, the only thing they care about is basketball. 16-year-olds, they care about basketball, but they care about trying to figure out where they're going to school. School's a lot more important to them, or sometimes not, but they're dealing with more things. I mean, if
Let's be honest. They're thinking about girls.
That's
They're
what I
thinking
was
about
gonna say.
boys.
That's what I was
Let's be
100
real.
different things. That's what I was gonna say.
On the court, they want like that image of like I'm cool.
No, but besides for that, it's also like like the 8-year-old, like the only thing they care about is basketball. So if they lose, like okay, now they're trying to work on it and become better for the next one. But now the 16-year-old's like, all right, but now I also have to deal with these other things that are going on. So like I feel like it's not just, it's you also have to understand the kid and like what they're going through to try to get, if you want them to play the way you want them to play, it's also understanding the kid and what they're going through and what's going on. That's why I think it's also so important to develop leadership. Like a lot of, like, yeah, when I coach, the kids look at me and they listen, that's great. But what I think really defines a great coach is like when you look at the team playing, are they leading each other? Because if they're just relying on the coach and they're not, because no matter what I tell them, they can look at me and say, yeah, but you're not doing it, you're just yelling at me to do it. But a 12-year-old talking to another 12-year-old and holding him accountable, they're both in class together. They both know what struggles they're going through. They both talk about girls, whatever. They know what's going on. They know they have a test tomorrow. They know they stayed up late last night studying. What I'm going through and what the 12-year-old is going through is not the same thing. So if they could find like between each other how to pick each other up, it's really important. I think sometimes maybe coaches think that it should, they're the only person that should be talking. Sometimes I ask the kid, like, what play do you want to run? Because then they'll feel like
ownership
on stuff. So I think that's really important too.
I think that's
I think
really
coach
great.
is 100% accurate. Player-led teams are the most successful teams, both short-term and long-term. And when you have players leading, and your point guard is extension of your coaching staff, it just goes around the entire culture of what you want in a program, and how you can measure success. I don't think success is always measured by wins and losses. Success is also measured by how you teach players to act not on the court, but also take those skills off the court.
Is the definition of success more focused on like how many points we win, or you think it's more of like the internal kid and understanding their self-esteem and understanding what sports gives to the kid?
I mean, the whole reason why the kids are playing or doing this is you can't you can't enter something and only think that you're entering something because of the end goal. Because that means if you don't hit the end goal, what's the end goal for every kid to make the NBA? So that means every single kid failed at their goal. That doesn't make any sense. So you set the goal where you want to set it, and then because you set the goal so high, you go as far as you can and you try to get as far as you can, and wherever you get to, it's because you set the goal so high. So the goal is not about winning. It is when you're playing, but it's not about, how many points and all those things. It's about what you learn from this experience. I would not be in the place I am now, and I still have a lot of room to grow, but I would not be where I am now if I didn't say when I was a little kid, I want to be in the NBA, and then I want to play Division I. Because if I wouldn't have said that, there's no way I would have even played Division III. The only reason I played Division III is because my goal was to play Division I. I trained so hard for that. If I would have trained to play Division III, maybe I wouldn't have even got there. So I set the goal so high, and because I set it so high, I was able to get to where I got to. And I'm not a failure because I'm a basketball coach now and not in the NBA right now. But if you would say that whatever my goal is, and if I don't hit it, that's failure. No, it doesn't make sense. It's you set goals and you try to reach them. You do whatever you can. Wherever you get to, it's because of your work ethic. And so you can't just, it's not about winning and points and everything. It's about what you learn from it. So what I learned from it now, I could take and use that work ethic into what I'm really good at. And now I can be in the NBA of coaching because of my work ethic and using it what I'm naturally or whatever good at. Because I don't think I was so naturally gifted at basketball, but I took so much work ethic to become better at it. So now if you're whatever the kid is, so if a kid's not so good at basketball, but they take the work ethic, they learn, and the kid's really good at science, he takes the basketball work ethic to something he's really good at, he's going to be the best science person ever. But if he didn't learn the work ethic from something else, he wouldn't be able to apply it. So it's really learning from basketball and using it to everything else that you do.
Yeah, to kind of build on that, I think if you fall in love with the process, the product will just fall into place later on. And if you set the standard high, like Coach is talking about, you may feel a little short, but since you set it so high, you can probably live with that result.
Do you think you could teach that drive, that want and desire, or is that something that like you have to be born with?
I think there's two responsibilities there. I think the first responsibility falls on the coach to create an environment and a standard that really kind of supports the habits that you want to have in your players. And then second is it's the player. The player's given the tools and the environment from the coach, but they're the ones that got to strike the match to have that fire within, right? They can have all the tools possible. We've heard the statement, you can lead a horse to water, but they got to drink it. Same type of thing. So I always talk about that fire and desire inside, but the player's the one that's got to strike the match to get it going.
What if you don't have it? What if you have all the things, okay? Let's say you're 6'4",
and that happens.
It's
a coach's dream, and coaches deal with this and wrestle with this all the time, right? You have this great player, they have the height, the skill, all this stuff that you want in anything, but they're not hungry enough. And it's the work that you have to do with that player and the mindset you have to try to get them in. And we talk about, like him and I were talking about outside, about skills and drills, but also a big part of coaching today is the mindset of your athlete. And I think the mindset of your athlete really matters. And that's how you can help try to, wrangle in that thought process of how can we help, build that desire. But they're going to have to want it in the end. It can't be mom and dad want them to be great. They got to want it.
That's a huge part of all of this is like the parent aspect. Mm-hmm. I find to be really challenging as a parent, okay, and as like a sports obsessed parent. I am calling myself out here. I'm a yeller on the sidelines. I am very guilty of it. I do respect coaches and refs like more than anything in the world. You will always find me like thanking a coach, thanking a ref, making sure my kids are doing the right thing. But as a parent, sometimes we want our kids to have that drive. We want our kids to have that work ethic that you're talking about, but sometimes they just don't have it. Sometimes they just don't have the skill. Like I see it especially I see it like on the Sunday youth leagues that are not necessarily AAU, right? Like they're these community organized divisions, and you play within the community, and you see these parents are dying for their children to be good at basketball. They're living vicariously through them. And I always wonder, like, the self-esteem impact, because the kid's not good. The kid just doesn't have the skills yet, let's just say, and the parent is dying inside. And I find that it's so difficult for a coach to coach when a parent is so obsessed with the kid winning and being the best and doing, instead of letting them learn and play as they go.
And fall in love with the game. I think that's most important, because I think that if you have passion about something, you know, put in the sport or put in the activity, that player, that student, that child is going to really want to pursue that more. So it starts with, like, you know, falling in love with the sport, falling in love with the game, and then also combining that with teaching them those great habits in terms of checking in, attending practice, being on time, and all those things. And if you have goals of wanting to increase performance, right? But the parents, for sure, are a part of the equation. I always talked about that. It's like coach, the athlete, the parent, and having that dialogue. But I think it's important that, you know, parents see that it's their journey, it's your child's journey, and let them go through that process.
Do you find it's different within our world?
With what?
Meaning, we have these like Sunday leagues, okay?
Mhm.
And you see, listen, I've seen people play at the Centa. I've seen people play in the 5 towns, and it is wild how the parents sort of get involved. And sometimes it's for the positive, and sometimes you see a child's face. You just see the defeat, and you're like, oh, I just want to like scoop you up and like show you how fun it could be, because the kids feel it from the parents. They feel it from their
Car ride home.
the car ride home.
The
is
car
the
ride home,
most
right? How do we
important
parent on
thing.
the car ride home?
Right.
I think the best thing to do is get in the car, because I also coach my own son, and sometimes there's a whole bunch of different things that can go on in that
The
world,
dynamic.
right? So it's really about thinking it through. And I think that, you know, the car ride home can be probably for some kids the most painful part of the day, right? Especially if I didn't play well, because now I got to hear about it on the way home. So I think just allowing them, you know, you get in the car, just if they want to talk about the game, they'll talk about the game, and kind of go in a different direction sometimes and let it simmer, and then you can always talk about it later.
I agree. But what happens when a kid is just so over the top upset? I've had kids, listen, my own kids are young to some extent. And it's different with boys than it is with girls. I just came back from a travel like tournament, and the girls were so emotionally drained by the whole thing. Whereas when my son goes on these travel tournaments, he is so fired up, and like, it's not an emotional thing. It is a pragmatic understanding. And how do you balance the two, where you're like dealing with kids' emotions and the parents' emotions and everything else? You have to be a therapist. You literally have to be a therapist in order to make sure that their self-esteem is not totally tanked.
Yeah.
Because like, losing's part of the game. Learning how to lose. Do you feel like you know how to handle kids when they lose?
For sure. But I think that it's really important that the parents, because they're going to show it more to the parents than they are going to show it to you. It depends on the level. If you're working with high school kids, you see them a lot more often. Depends if it's an AAU game and you have 3 games in the day, you don't really have a chance to really talk about the loss. If it's a school game, then that hurts a little bit more, because you don't have so many of them and there's such a long break in between games. And you get to, you know, they really show their emotions, and they're upset with their parents probably when they go home. Because in the locker room, if you see the kids are upset, we don't leave the locker room until everyone feels good, but you don't really know. So then when they go home, it's really the parent. And then when they come to the practice the next day, usually the kids are like, okay, we're moving on to the next thing. But when a kid is really, really, really upset, you have to deal with them differently. And if it's your best player that's upset, then if it's a kid who's upset because he didn't get as much playing time, like, there's so many different things and how to handle them. But the most important thing is for them to realize that the team is a family, just like your parents are your family, and that you could, it's okay to talk. I do think I tell parents all the time, like I love when parents call me and say, how's my son doing? With the skill development and how's it going? Because I tell them, it's like, they say, oh, I'm sorry to bother you. It's like, really, thank God we train a lot of kids. It's really not so many parents that call me to ask me that question. And so it's great that you're trying to be involved and understand what the kid needs to work on and stuff like that. But I think it's important that the parent kind of directs the kid, oh, you're upset about something. Why don't you talk over with coach? Because sometimes the parent's message isn't going to be the same message the coach is saying. And then there's only so much you can do in the time you have to practice to, I tell the kids all the time, I'm like, listen, I care about your parents. I like your parents. I know you love your parents. But right now, these 15 guys are the only people that matter right now. You can't be looking over at your parent during the game because, like, yeah, they want what's best for you. I want what's best for you too. But like, you have to, like, if you want to look at them, then like, why am I here? Like, you have to, it's important. And we try to tell parents before the season begins, like, hey, like, this is, like, we're there in practice, so like no disrespect or whatever. Just you have to stay in your lane. And I find, and you're probably good at it, I find that coaches, when they come to watch their kid play for someone else, they're the most respect because they know what it's like to be a coach, and they don't like when parents are like that. So I'm sure if you ever had your kid play,
100%,
and you're watching, it's like you probably don't say a word because you know it's not the right thing to do, and you probably know just as much as the coach because you're a coach yourself too, but you can't. I'll go watch kids that I've coached before, and like parents are like excited because they think I'm going to coach them from. I'm like, listen, like I'm just going to sit there and watch, and like I'll talk about it maybe after with you, but like I'm not going to tell a kid what to do on the court because that's not what the coach wants to do. Like you can't. So it's hard, but parents don't understand it. I don't think it's coming from a bad place.
Definitely not coming from
it's
a bad
not.
place.
They just, like, even when I was playing, I remember my dad used to tell me, be more aggressive. Like, that's not just a bad thing to say, but like, I don't know, like it's annoying to hear as a coach. So it's hard for the parents to understand. So
it's amazing because this kind of circles back to the mindset of the athlete and giving them also tools that they need to be successful, right? So we just got involved with this great app that's AI driven called the Mastery app, and we're supplying it to all of our Lightning players coming up. We're about to unfold it and release it. But basically what it is an app that goes on a device for a player, and then they can input a feeling that they're having. Maybe it's about playing time, maybe it's anxiety before a big game, insert whatever the situation is. And then the app generates audio, breathing techniques, and helps get that athlete in the right mindset for whatever the circumstance is. So, we spend so much time talking about skills, drills, and X and O's, but, the mindset of the modern day athlete today is really important. And it's important as coaches, we think about the steps and tools that are necessary to try to supply them, with the best chance to succeed.
I agree with the mindset aspect. But do you think that in a world now where like everyone has anxiety, literally every single child is coming in, I have anxiety and it's so stressful, and is it hard to coach through that part of it? Because it is like when a kid has a bad day in school and then they come to the game and they're like totally out of sorts, how do you get them back in that mode?
Well, you know what? Basketball was my therapy as a player, regardless of what was going on in my world, whether I was a teenager or college player, whatever it was. Even as a coach, sometimes it's just your therapy. You get on the court and like everything else outside of that doesn't really matter for those 60 minutes or 90 minutes that you're there. You're with your teammates, and that's why it's important that you pick an environment that's really nurturing to your son or daughter. Because if they're going to practice in a game and they're really being constructively taught how to play and an environment is there that it's nurturing and supportive, right? They can take that time and that 60 minutes and 90 minutes as an outlet, not as a stressor.
It's a huge thing because every child needs something different. And I have 4 kids, and every child of mine needs a different type of coach. They're not the same.
Sure.
My kids.
For sure.
And every single one is a completely different player and a completely different like personality type. And with that, I had to make a choice as a mom, like which program do I put my kids into?
Yeah.
Because not every coaching style is the same. Not every kid needs the same thing. Listen, I have one kid who is a phenomenal sports player. And I have another kid who's great at sports and great at basketball, but the drive is very different.
Yeah.
So, and he's the one that plays for Lightning and he plays for Rep, and it's you can see the different skill set, and I made a choice for my second son that maybe a certain program wasn't right for them,
Right.
and I switched them to a different one where the coaching system was a lot calmer and they focused more on the whole child rather than winning and moving forward. And it really changed his entire personality. Like they started to develop better. And actually he's better at sports now because he's been going to programs like yours where they're building his confidence and he's learning the skills and playing better rather than being sat on a bench the entire time, not learning any skills whatsoever. And I think that that's a huge thing. Like, how do you balance, like, I want my kid to do well, and I want them to be part of a team, but they're probably not going to get the same amount of minutes.
I also think that basketball, especially in our community, but in general, is a social thing.
Yes.
So
Huge.
as important it is for a kid to be on a team and play, it's also important for them on a Saturday or a Sunday or any day to go in the backyard and be able to play with their friends. And you don't want to be in a position where your son doesn't feel confident just to step on the court and play. So just to have the ability to like know the game or play a little bit is good because it allows them to be around friends because that's what boys do. And even that's what girls do now. So, you know,
100%.
It's important for them just to be around kids and play sports.
I say that my kids can, we were in Israel for Passover and I dropped my kids off at the park, like in the middle of Jerusalem, and because they had that skill, they had a huge pickup game with kids from California and Israel, and like it was crazy. And you really do see that because in our community, obviously we don't have electronics on the Sabbath, and you're really spending a lot of time on unwinding. And part of that is hanging out with friends, having these meals together. And sometimes you have meals with people you don't even know. And they could be a little weird for kids. Well, the parents know each other, but the kids don't. And if you're able to play sports, I promise you're so right that it like changes in a second. All of a sudden they're friends. And you're like, oh, okay, great. It wasn't so awkward. It's so easy to feel confident and good because I could pick up a ball. But what happens if your kid is not so good at that? Can you try to encourage them? Like maybe they like building Lego more or whatever the case may be. Do you think that there is a way to really like help them, especially like you do? And there's also Little Lightning, right?
Yeah.
Where teach them from like a young age, just like basic skills so that they're able to feel confident to get on the court like you spoke about. Is there like a way you can help your kid as a parent push them to even not be scared to get on the court?
Well, I think
with
it's
the
about
little skill they
I think
have?
it's about exposure. You brought it up. Sports break barriers, right? All those barriers that you talked about, whether we're talking about religious barriers right now. So sports break the barrier, and giving your kid exposure to being a multi-sport athlete is also really important at a young age because it's their journey to find like what they're passionate about. It goes right back to that whole topic. And if you give them the exposure to basketball and you give them an environment that's going to really teach fundamentals and development and give them those basic tools so that when they go with their friends, hey, mom, dad, I really like this. I want to do this at a little bit more competitive of a stage. And then you have options through there.
So when we talk about like a more competitive stage, okay, and we are in the era of social media. I know you have used social media to really capitalize and show the world what basketball could be. You've really used that tool. I see it a lot. You're starting to do that also. And do you find that social media is a distraction or a help when it comes to basketball? Because we see this like culture of like highlight culture and where kids are doing crazy alley-oops and trying to get these like slam dunks so that the clips that they can post are wild. Do you think that it's helping or hindering us?
At least with the kids that I coach, I think like before a game, if they see the guy, like it's cool. But I don't know if kids during the game are like there's a video guy here, I'm gonna go between the legs, behind the back, I don't really see it so much. Maybe because most of the kids that we coach are younger, but even like the high school kids, when we go to Maccabee and different things like that, like the kids want to win. So I think it also depends on the culture that you're breeding. Like, I had a kid at 4th grade game the other day, made pass behind his back, and so the kid's really talented and really good passer. So I called him over. I was like, why'd you make that pass? And like he said, like that was really the only way I could get it there. So I was like, okay, at least you have to manage it. Like it doesn't mean that you should never do that if you're capable of doing something and you want, but it just has to be for the right reasons. And so I think I think it's easy to see if you think a kid's doing it for the wrong reasons, and then you could just have to work with them and doing that. You have to think about it. Like if whatever you do, if someone was videoing you would want to do it to the best of your ability. But I think when the game's going on, there's so much happening, and I mean, you're holding them accountable for their mistakes. I don't think they're just gonna start doing it so much. But I think after the game, they all run to see, like what was posted, what was going on. Right now, I don't see it so bad. I'm curious.
I was gonna say, I think it's a different culture.
I think it's what you prioritize.
Mm-hmm.
So you're always gonna have people that are gonna trophy chase and highlight chase. And if a coach is thinking about social media and having those discussions with their team, if you're posting stuff that is focusing on the player running back on defense and getting a tip ball, knock it out of bounds, or diving on a loose ball, or ball movement, I think some of the best clips that coaches can post or teammates can post is, spacing and ball movement, and then find the open look. And I talk to our teammates about we shots over me shots, and a team, when they go down the floor, 5 guys seeking the best shot that they can get. And, having those discussions with, let's say, 10-year-olds is really important. And just like a varsity coach having those discussions with a 16-year-old, is really important, whether they're having that in a film session or at a practice. So if you're highlighting that and prioritizing that, and you're having those conversations, that's what you want your team to kind of get into the mindset of thinking. So each team is different, and each kid's going to be different. And then you're always going to have people out there, posting some highlights that are self-centered. Just like you're going to have players that are going down there, seeking a shot that they can get because they're focused on how many points they get, right? They're point counters.
Stat chasers.
So, and you're always going to have people that are going to trophy chase. They're going to switch jerseys and just try to get on the team that's going to win. And I think the most important thing is that you put yourself in an environment where you're going to really develop as a player.
So I think that's a little different in our community than it is in other communities, because we only have so many opportunities, I would say, when it comes to like trophy chasing or like stat chasing. I don't really find that. Do you find that so much?
Not so much. I mean, look, if you play for your school teams, you're not going to switch schools. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, I think
it's more club I was talking about, like club.
Yeah, well,
teams,
even that
even
stuff.
Club,
because,
we don't have that much, right?
I mean, look, you don't have your son in an all Jewish program, but if people want to be in an all Jewish program, how many options do they have?
Right.
So that's probably to your point that there's not really many options for that stuff. So no, I don't see it as much, but I also don't know if the Jewish community in general is looking so much to be out and playing and all these different things. When you have now, when I was a kid, I had to go outside to look to these different things. But now there's more between my program and other programs. There's more things going on within the community. So why do you have to go outside so much more to do that? Like before he was training with me, I'm sure he was doing, like, he wasn't sitting home. Like, you wouldn't have that. So,
no.
Right. So now you have an option, with the Jewish program. Maybe you don't have to drive him somewhere else. And he's in the Lightning program, but he doesn't have to be in 3 other programs like that outside. So there's more options within the community to help the kids. I think it's helping them. The kids in Brooklyn, now we started to put together travel teams, and they're going to play in Basketball City. So that's the next step for them. They always wanted to stay local and just play in the community league. Now they want more competitions. Now they're playing for us and going there. But again, parents in our community, the first question is, where is it? If it's outside of a certain drive, they're out, So
I just said to Kevin,
there's parents in every community. They want to know where it is. I don't blame them.
I'm like, it's really far, Massapequa. Like, when are we going to have our own gym so that we don't have to go so far? So it's like so true.
That's what it is.
We don't want to have to go all over the world, especially when we feel that, like, at least I feel for my own kids, like, he's not going to be 6'4". Unfortunately, he has really Jewish genes.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he's going to be probably, if he's lucky and he gets on growth hormones, you know, which is like an epidemic in our community. Everyone is on a growth hormone. Like, he might not, he'll play high school, she'll do high school, but maybe she'll do college if she plays for Stern, YU, whatever it is. But I don't know. And I think you're right that like we play a lot just together. And I think that there is fun in seeing the other competition and being able to play against kids who are looking to go play Division I and BA. And listen, Shai has kids on his team that could truly make it to the NBA. They have these natural abilities that I've never seen ever. And I'm like, my mouth is like wide open. I'm like, you're 10? How are you 10 years old?
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy.
But also like within the Jewish community now, there's so much talent across the entire country that like a junior Maccabee or a Maccabee gets them that exposure. Like maybe they don't need to so much go out into the non-Jewish world if they can. Well, first, let me get out of Brooklyn. Let me go play a team from California that's Jewish also before I go out there. So like when they have these 1 week stints or weekend stints, sometimes that's enough for the parent to say, hey, they branched out of the community. But then you have other people that really, really want to do it. And that's why you have Shai doing different things like that. Then, you know, but as far as like the whole, I don't think so many parents are pushing for that right away. Maybe if they see their kid is really, really, really into it and they're really the best, then they'll put them in those situations.
Do you think that religiously we are doing that to also keep a little bit of that protection?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a parent yet, so I can't tell you. But I think it's only good to be with people that aren't Jewish because you're going to be with them
for the rest of your life.
When I went to college, or even if you want to go to YU, okay, great. After you're 22 years old, you have to deal with people that you don't necessarily grow up dealing with, and you have to understand how the real world works. So why not experience it when you're younger? I don't know if that's necessarily to do with that. I think it also has to do with, well, if I'm the only person that's going to go to this non-Jewish program or this program that's going to be further away from me, now I got to do the drop-off and the pickup. When I carpool, you know how many parents, they drive once or twice a semester because they carpool with 10 kids? Or they have a driver for the 10 kids?
We're with all of them, yeah,
so
exactly.
So it's sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. But I think there's plenty of, like, I know kids, besides for your son, that also, you know, want to do and play in different programs. And I did it as a kid also. I think because of that, it allowed me, like, if I only had Jewish connections, how far would it take me in the basketball world and the coaching world? It wouldn't. So it for sure helped me. And I think it would help most kids. And that's why I try to give them that experience within my program. That's why we play in these other things. But I like the opportunity to be able to have my all Jewish team go to play against these non-Jewish teams. And because they get to build relationships, but also it's some sort of comfort level. Like when I was playing, it's like I had to miss a practice on a Friday night or a Saturday. It's like, well, now what's going to be? And obviously, you know, Kevin made it clear, they don't hold you accountable, but like, I don't know. It's just, there's enough Jewish talent where they could play and compete against non-Jewish teams or more competitive teams.
I think it goes to value and investment, right? It boils down to those two things. If the value is there with the program and the coach that you're with, and they're maybe also instilling also values within your child, right? It's worth that investment, not just only financially, but also the investment of our time and the things that we maybe have to sacrifice, whether you know, time with family and friends, or, you know, time away from other things that we would be doing. So I think that's just something we have to look at.
I think it's also for us, at least in my perspective, is that my value system is solely in the Jewish world. Like I want my kids to keep Shabbos and to keep kosher, and because there's so much beauty in that part of it. But I also want them to be exposed. I also want them to know that there's an outside world out there. But you can straddle both sides. You can live in both worlds and be able to like really appreciate what the other side has to offer. And you guys are both doing that within your programs. I mean, listen, Shai plays for Lightning where he can't go to Friday night practices. You're 100% right. He doesn't go to Friday night practices. Sometimes he misses games. And sometimes he's like worried, like, shoot, am I not going to be able to play the next time because I missed that practice or whatever it is. But it happens to be that we decided to stay with a team that felt accommodating and understood the value and the drive. And he practices 4 nights a week. I find that it's harder within our community to find 4 nights a week to even practice because we put a lot of value in education and we put a lot of value in multi-sports or multi-extracurricular things.
They're also in school longer. They have the double curriculum.
Exactly. We're in school. I just said, I'm like, we don't end school till 5 o'clock. And then I jump in the car to drive them to Timbuktu in order to get them to their games.
Right.
So it's really, I feel like it's a little bit harder. And do you find that there's like, it's difficult to coach a kid who has these restrictions or do you want them on your team because they have this like value system of honoring like responsibility and standards and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's important too, like in the world we live in, to celebrate our differences and to give our kids an education on that. And with regards to the amount of practice, I mean, being in the gym 3 days a week, obviously you want to focus in on some things. And I think the important value is it's not about quantity, it's about quality. So when you are going to the gym, the quality sessions that you're getting from your coach or from your trainer are really valuable to help you take it to the next stage of development.
Okay. I'm going to ask you guys like really quick rapid fire questions. First things that come to mind. Okay. MJ, Kobe, or LeBron?
MJ.
Kobe.
Always Kobe. I'm sorry.
But that's another discussion for next podcast.
I'm sorry, but like I'm a diehard Laker fan. I made my bridesmaids wear Laker purple. I'm not exaggerating. Kobe was life, okay? Like Mamba forever. And so we're going to disagree. Okay. What's one drill you won't stop running?
A competitive drill that focuses on finishing that I run.
Weekend layup drill.
Okay. I hear that one too. Okay. Mental toughness or natural ability?
Mental toughness.
Mental toughness, but I feel like it's easy. Like
I call it grit. Grit.
Grit is the number one reason why people are successful. Mm-hmm. If you've ever read the book on grit, there's like it's huge. So I agree totally. What's more impressive, a 30-point run or 0 turnovers in 30 minutes?
0 turnovers.
I feel like the right answer is to say 0 turnovers, but 30-point run sounds pretty cool.
I was gonna say, I'm like, that's really cool too, but yes. But I do think I watched girls basketball is very different than boys basketball, and girls basketball, like it is just one turnover after another and a jump ball after another after another. Like I'm like, what is happening here? And I know that I was guilty of it also. Like just grab the ball in front of you. But I hear that. Okay, most important part of the game, defense or offense?
Defense, because it leads to offense.
There you go.
Yeah, I agree. Defense leads to offense.
Okay. What's one thing you look for when you're drafting your team?
People you want to.
I want
being
great,
around. Sorry,
yeah, go.
No, just having people you want to be around. Not just they're good at basketball. Like you want to be around. You're going to be in practice. You're going to be in games. You're going to be in a locker room. People you surrounding yourself with people you want to spend time with.
Yeah, I think great teammates is super important, and that team first mentality. People that are going to come in and focus on the one mission in terms of what and that sometimes makes a player sacrifice certain things too.
I hear that. What's the best advice you ever got from a coach?
Be who you are.
The most important play is the next one.
I like that. Okay. And to end off, in one sentence, why should kids play sports?
Oh, I think kids should play sports, because of all it's going to give to you after life after sports. And it's going to help you with the workforce. It's going to help you in real life with relationships across so many different avenues. So, and I think it's important that kids play multi-sport.
It's a microcosm of the world. So whatever you learn in basketball or sports in general, take for the rest of your life.
I love it. Thank you guys so much
Thank
for
you
being
for having
here. I
us.
really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was really great and so informative. Seriously, I really appreciate it. Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I
Great.
hope it wasn't so painful.
No, it was
it
great.
was good.
It was great.
Okay.
That was good.
Hopefully we didn't look too nervous on camera.
No, I don't think you look